Heyo, welcome to today's episode of the Heyo podcast. I'm gonna try something a little different. I'm gonna do this as a live podcast. So I'm gonna record my podcast the way I normally would. If you haven't been around for a while, I do a podcast. It's about 10 minutes long. It's just me talking about various things from creativity to Christianity to ministry to cooking, just stuff I'm into. I've been toying around with the idea of a podcast for a while. Started it last fall. We had a baby December 7th. Those of you with more than one kid, one kid changes everything, but even that uh, changes everything. But then you add other kids on top of that, and it gets like a whole new level of bananas, right? So that's what just this is one of those things that I kind of had to put on the back burner and let take a back seat for a season. So that's what I did. But I'm back into it. So we're in a quarantine right now. We are doing some stuff a little different. Facebook Live and other avenues like YouTube Live have become the only way to communicate. Those of us that are locked in our homes, and so we're gonna take some time. I'm gonna do my podcast. I'm trying out some software, some equipment. I've updated some stuff in my home studio, my home office. Made it a little interesting. So I'm having fun. I hope you're enjoying this. I went live last night. It's not super. I don't make a habit of going live every day, but like I said, things are different in this season, and that's kind of what I'm going to get into in the podcast episode. Let me just jump over to my computer real quick and start the recording. Check 1 2. Check. Are you hearing me? Yes, you are. Okay, great. So we're doing a couple different things here. So this is exciting. Thanks for watching. I'm not going to read the comments right now because I'm going to record the podcast episode. I'm going to dive into what I want to talk about. And then after that, I'll kind of open up. I'll scroll back through. I'll go a little more casual. So right now I'm going to be more like just blasting content out there. I usually like to be a little bit more conversational, but I'm going to go ahead and record the podcast, and you're welcome to stay tuned. It's going to be about 10 minutes long, if that. And then right after that, I'm going to dive into any questions, anything you want to talk about relative to the podcast or not, anything going on in your life. Just want to connect. Again, I think social distancing is so important right now, but beyond that, I think that there's a component of community. I think that we're learning that I've been on FaceTime more these past couple weeks than I have, I think, the entire ownership of my iPhone, right? So we're realizing there's a component of community missing. So my desire for this episode is not just to blast you with good content, although that's part of it. It's also let's have a conversation. So let me record the episode. I'll kind of share some thoughts with you, and then I'll dive into some Q&A and be a little more interactive. If you want to comment while I'm recording, that's totally fine. I can't see it. And then I'm going to turn on, I'll see them, but I can't see it in the moment. So I'm just going to record the podcast, and then we'll go from there. Let me just check my recording here. Okay, so we look like we're all right. Let me hit record again. All right, so I want to talk about the idea of pivoting. I say the word pivot, and you guys think of one thing, right? Like one thing jumps to mind. But I want to talk about an example in the media that just happened a couple months ago that teaches us a little something about what it means to pivot. Heyo, welcome to this week's podcast. All right, so those of you that are listening to the podcast, at the time of the recording, I'm also simultaneously broadcasting this live to Facebook and YouTube, testing out a few things, but also just enjoying the opportunity to be a little more creative on a couple different. In this podcast episode, the reason I chose this one particularly to live stream visually is because there's some visual components to it. So if you're listening to the podcast on your usual channel like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that, thank you, number one, for listening. Thank you for sharing it. I've gotten a lot of good feedback, even just from the first 7 episodes of this thing. And it means a lot when you share it and when you communicate to other people that this is something worth listening to. So thank you for doing that. But if you're listening to it on one of those more traditional channels, I would recommend jumping over to my YouTube channel or my Facebook page, which I'll link those in the show notes on the podcast website, and you can link over if you want to see some of the visual things that I'm talking about. Just a couple pictures I'm going to throw in there that will kind of help breathe some life into the episode, and it'll make sense in a second. So I don't know if you've noticed this, This movie just came out. I took my kids to it before the COVID-19 quarantine, but it was a great movie. Really brought me back to my childhood. The Sonic movie, Sonic the Hedgehog, right? And so for those of you that are, you may know this story already, but back in May last year, spring 2019, it was April-ish, they announced the Sonic the Hedgehog trailer, and the movie had been in production or in talks since 2014. In 2017, it actually began production. Early 2019, they launched the first trailer, and fans went nuts. Like, let me just go ahead and pull it up here on the feed, because I really have to show this to you. So let's just pull up some slides here. So I'm going to talk about the idea of pivoting, and then how this relates to what does it mean to pivot. So this is the image, the Ross Geller moving the furniture down the stairs. Pivot, pivot, like that's what jumps into your head. But I want to share with you a real life example of what it means to pivot and how it worked in this case of the Sonic movie. So they launched this trailer in early 2019, right? April or May. And fans all over the internet went crazy. The reason being because if you've seen the Sonic, so this is Sonic from the childhood video game, right? The 90s Sega video game, Sonic the Hedgehog. This is a representation from a toy from the 90s. Okay, so this is what Sonic is supposed to look like. Those of you that don't know, he's blue, he's very cartoonish, big eyes. So the Sonic movie announced that they're making this movie, and then they launched the trailer. And let me show you the Sonic in the trailer. Absolutely horrifying. This is what they came out with in the Sonic trailer as far as what they showed the general public. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to think of that. Like, that's, let me move over here. That's a little bit, it's a little bit horrifying. That is a long way off from this. Like, how did you get that from this? I don't know. That just, to me, something's going on. Like, what happened? Like, what happened there? So they announced the trailer. Everybody hates it, basically. Everybody goes nuts. In May, they announced, hey, listen, we're hearing you. We're going to change things. This is not okay. Like, clearly we missed something. And so that's kind of rare. I didn't expect that reaction, to be honest. I was kind of following along this online conversation. I didn't contribute to it because I didn't care that much. I mean, it did bother me. It was horrifying. I mean, and he's got these weird human teeth. Sonic the Hedgehog, he just looks horrifying. That's the stuff nightmares are made of, right? So the studios went back and they said, you're right, we missed it. They pushed the deadline back. It was supposed to come out in the fall, I think. And it ended up, they pushed it to February of 2020. And they said, we're going to go back to the drawing board and we're going to get this thing right, which was cool. I was like, man, Paramount Production, come on, props to you. You took the feedback and you pivoted. You see the tie-in? So they changed things up, and this is the new Sonic they came up with. Much better, right? Much more clear representation of the childhood version. Big cartoon eyes, perfect proportion of the blue hair to the skin tone, to the shoes being perfect, the gloves. I mean, just like amazing representation, night and day. They launched that trailer in November. So from May to November, they were pivoting, and it was rumored they were going to spend $35 million on this change. It ended up being only around $5 million on changing the entire production, changing Sonic in his entirety, in the main character of the movie having to be reanimated frame by frame. Crazy. But they did it. So they pushed the movie back. In November, they dropped this trailer, and the internet had the opposite reaction they did the first time. They loved it. Everybody was just, wow, thank you. I can't believe this. I am definitely going to see this movie. You can see the contrast there between the two Sonics. Just one clearly looks like the childhood Sonic we all grew up playing, and the other one looks like a horrifying burger of death. Like, that is awful, right? So I really love what Paramount did. You would just be like, well, screw what the fans think. Like, we're going to do what we want to do. Who cares what anybody thinks? Like, we're the experts. But I love that they pivoted their situation and they said, it's really all about the fans, and we're going to do this thing right. And I think the numbers speak for themselves. So Sonic, despite having to get cut short out of theaters, it only ran in theaters for a limited time, COVID-19. Well, it was the second grossing movie, video game based movie of all time, fell only behind to Detective Pikachu. And like I said, it got cut short. It did $133 million in its run in theaters. And then now it's being released. Actually, at the time of this recording, it's being released straight to digital much earlier than anticipated. And so I loved. I love that they did this. I love that they pivoted. If you followed this story, you probably saw, some of the interaction online, but maybe didn't realize all the ins and outs of it. And I actually went and saw it. I took my kids to it. Caleb, my 3-year-old, then ran around the movie theater afterwards for a long time. It was not a great idea to take a 3-year-old to see a Sonic movie. Great movie. Just really wound him up and convinced him that he could be as fast as Sonic, right? So funny. But I just had a couple thoughts about this whole scenario. I think first and foremost, so Gen Z, this current generation, like 14 to 20-year-olds, really, Gen Z are, and I'm not getting that number right, but that's the general idea, the age range. They are more prone to give feedback than any other generation. They, more than anybody, want to have a conversation. They want to be heard, ultimately. And I think we can learn from Paramount. If they're not too big to pivot and change and turn on a dime and fix stuff, then we should be able to, in our businesses, our industry, our ministries, our industries, whatever we do, we should be able to turn and pivot based on feedback from who matters, right? And so, like I said, the numbers spoke for themselves. People showed up in droves to see this movie. And I think, number one, we should pivot before we have to. In this case, Paramount pivoted out of necessity, but what if they had a focus group of the type of people that would see this movie and they broadcast that trailer just to them? Maybe an invite of 100 people to say, we're going to show you this trailer, let's see what you think. Like, did nobody think that this version of Sonic was horrifying? Did nobody ever think that internally? Like, everybody was just okay with this? I don't know. So what if they had done that and they would have saved some time if they showed a few exclusive scenes instead of all this time that went into a trailer for this movie? So pivot before you have to. Get feedback, get interaction before your event, your product, before whatever it is goes live. Get some good feedback and pivot before you have to. And then secondly, make changes that you can follow through on. If you can't pivot, then don't bother saying you're going to. Don't bother opening up for feedback. And then commit to the changes. So if right now in this season, we're all pivoting in major ways in everything that we're doing. We're all changing how we do church. We're changing how we do business. We're changing how we do family life, how we do school. We're changing everything. We're having to pivot on a dime. And are we doing our best to follow through in this? Is any of this going to stick? Or in a couple months when the dust settles, God willing, will this all just go back to the way it was? Or are we going to take some of these things that we've been forced to pivot into and retain that? Are we going to continue to do the things we're doing now? For example, a lot of youth ministries that I'm connected to didn't have a great social media presence prior to this COVID-19 disaster. Now they're being forced to have a good social media presence. Is that going to stick? Or are you going to go back to focusing a lot on live services and not having great social media? Just a thought. And I'm guilty of that. I'm preaching to myself on that note. And then thirdly, and this kind of I said already, but listen to feedback and adjust accordingly. Like, ask for feedback before it's given and be consistently seeking out what other people are saying about your project. Not that you have to please everybody. You're never going to make everybody happy. But you should be able to have thick enough skin to be open to see what people are saying about your stuff and adjust accordingly. It could pay off. Gen Z just wants to be heard. They want to have a conversation. They don't want to be preached to. They don't want to be thrown content to. They want their voice to be heard. What are you doing in your business, in your ministry, in your endeavors to listen to feedback and pivot accordingly? Come on, let's be like Ross Geller. Let's be like Paramount Pictures. Let's pivot before we have to. Let's make changes that we can follow through on, and let's get feedback and adjust accordingly. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Glad you're tuning in to this episode. That's all I got. Remember, subscribe in your favorite podcast app if you want to continue to get more of these delicious episodes in your ears, and share it with your friends. I appreciate every time you mention this to somebody. Appreciate every time you share it. Thankful for your listenership, and for your commitment to continue the conversation. Contact me on Instagram, Facebook, or email me, and let's keep the conversation going. Let me know what you're doing to pivot and to survive in these interesting times. God bless you. And God bless America. I don't know. That's the end of the podcast episode. I'm now going to shift over into the more casual conversation about what we're doing. So let me pause my podcast and let me jump over on Facebook to where I can actually see. Family walked out on that movie. Okay, bro. Bro, I haven't seen Joe Exotic. I have not seen the Tiger King. Do you think Christian youth should be watching the Tiger King, Daniel? I don't know, man. I don't know anything about it. Yeah, Matt, you're right on, bro. I definitely like, hey kids, we're gonna go see this movie. But it was really for me. It was totally for me, man. I didn't even care if they were for me. There's so much nostalgia wrapped up in that movie. What's your opinion on the view that? Oh my gosh, Matt, that is a good comment. You're ridiculous. Everybody's watching this gonna be like, dude, who are these guys, Matt and Daniel, that you got on your feed, man? You gotta block them. You gotta boot them off. Hey, anything you want to talk about not related to the Little Blue Demon Sonic? Uh, anything not, anything not related? Anything else you want to talk about? What was I gonna say? Yeah, thanks for making it spiritual, guys. Sonic the Little Blue Demon. Appreciate that. I'll post that podcast episode probably in a couple days, maybe next week. I'm just excited to be kind of getting back in the game. Like I said, took a hiatus from podcasting and side projects and things I'm passionate about and interested in, just for a season of new baby. Logan, you get it. New baby throws everything off for a little bit, so did that. Oh, hello. I'm having issues here, technical difficulties. Did the whole back, and I'm not perfect at that. Like I still took off, bit off a little more than I could chew in some other ways. So, not saying I'm the king of slowing life down, but definitely, there's when you introduce something new into your life, you got to take something out at least for a season. And so this is one of the things that I took out. But how are y'all doing, man? Let's check in. So I recorded the podcast episode already, and that was fun. I liked doing it this way. The difficulty is I'm showing things on the screen that I can't show in a podcast episode. So I don't know how relevant it is. My idea was I wanted to be able to syndicate content. So be able to have one piece of content that you can put on multiple sources. So a podcast episode could also be a Facebook Live, could also be a YouTube video. And I don't know, there's a word for that. Viralocity, is that the term? Viralocity, Daniel, is that what that is? You take one piece of content and put it in a bunch of different places. I don't know if podcasting is a great venue for that, because there's things you can do visually on a Facebook Live and on a YouTube Live that you can't do in a podcast episode. So I don't know if it makes sense. But I enjoy the possibility of it. I'm just, this is all one big experiment. So if you were on last night, I had this white background, I had my Mevo camera, I had my audio set up, and I had no front lighting. So tonight I'm doing another experiment with some better front lighting and trying things out differently there. Like I said earlier, I think we're all a little bit behind on the streaming game, on the Facebook game, on the putting good content out there in a really good way. And I think, yeah, if anything, I'm challenging myself to get better at it. So I'm not like the king of this. I'm just saying now is the time to figure your crap out. Excuse the language, when it comes to online streaming and stuff. So, bro, that is amazing. The Tiger King. Daniel photoshopped me onto Joe Exotic. That image speaks to me, bro. That's powerful. So good. Oh man, I miss you, bro. It's not the same. It's not the same, man. Excited for your gym. I think that's all I got for today. I think I'm gonna shut this thing down. It's quickly spiraling downward here. between calling Sonic a little blue demon and photoshopping my face onto Joe Exotic, we have reached an all-time low on my Facebook Live videos. So miss you guys. Love you all. Let's keep the conversation going. I'll post the podcast episode later and see how it comes out. Like I said, see how it works. So if you have any questions about online streaming, about anything, this is not like a pitch to go like, hey, I can help you get online, because I don't have time to help you. But if I can answer questions, I can help help you figure stuff out. So I was talking to a pastor a couple last week who has no idea what he's doing when it comes to online streaming. Talked to a lot of pastors, myself included, that have no idea what they're doing. And we're trying to help him get online and get things going. So having a lot of fun. Hope you guys are figuring it out, making it work in your context, whatever that looks like for you. And if there's anything I can do to help you, let me know. Love you guys, and I will connect with you later. Thanks for watching this online live broadcast of my podcast episode recording. Heyo, and I will show you the podcast link at a future date. Thanks for watching.